Welcome, everybody. We'll be getting started in just a few minutes. Thank you for coming. We still have quite a few people joining, so we're going to just wait another minute or so before we get started. Thank you all for coming. because we have a lot of people still joining. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to turn off the music. Thank you. Hi, my name is Barbara Mongar, and I'm a board member of the AlaskaCAN. And I'd like to welcome you to our 2022 spring convening. And before we get started, I'd like to start with a land acknowledgement. I want to take a minute to acknowledge that no matter where we are located, we are standing on traditional Native Alaska lands. I'm located in Wasilla, the traditional lands of the Ahtna and Dena'ina Athabascan peoples, whose presence and stewardship dates back countless of generations, both past, present, and future. I honor with gratitude their stewardship and guidance. Our community owes its existence to the previous generations who have contributed their hopes, dreams, and energy leading to us to this moment. Thank you for allowing me to honor you. And then next, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank you, like I said, for joining us today. And I'd like to ask everybody to change your name. I'm sure if you know how to do that, but if you can change your name to your name and region, or the region first, and then your name. And the map is on the screen. So whatever region you feel connected with, because we're going to be doing breakout groups later, and we will be changing or putting people in by region on some of the breakout groups. And then also what I'd like to do is just go over the agenda for a second. Today our topic is building cultural identity as a post-secondary strength. And our objectives are exploring how we help students to understand their cultural identity and how it relates to their post-secondary goals, highlighting success stories of work being done in this area around the state, and expanding advocacy networks. And so as you see, we have some great speakers. Dr. Janelle Vanessa is going to be talking to us about a tool, Rethinking Readiness. And then we'll have presenters from the Alaska Humanities Forum, Chuck Sucka and Emily Brockman. And then we'll have a presenter, Leslie A. Mines. And then we will have some students present from ANSAP. And we'll be doing some breakout groups also. So I think this is going to be a really full convening, and I'm going to hand it over to Emily right now to go ahead and introduce our first speaker. Emily.
Good afternoon. I am so glad you are all here, and I'm so glad to be talking about this topic. Many of you probably participated in the March annual meeting, and we got to hear a little bit from Mandy Savage-Romer. I felt like she was really helpful in articulating what is often missing from college-going identity, and that is identity. That feels like a really big key to me. I work with the Association of School Boards, and we've been looking at our state's outcomes when it comes to post-secondary, knowing that we're all working really hard and we're investing really heavily in improving our outcomes, and we're still not quite where we want to be. And talking about identity and the role that it plays in post-secondary readiness is a huge key. And we're so lucky to have Janelle Vanas with us today, and just interstate doing the work that she's doing over many years and is going to continue to be doing, thinking about how that applies to our state here in Alaska. So with that, I'm very excited to turn it over to Janelle. I might drop a few links in as we go along in case you want to catch up on some of Mandy's work or connect with ASB as we are tracking who else is working on identity as a post-secondary readiness skill. So thanks for joining, and I'll turn it over to Janelle. And Janelle, I think you might be on mute. Here we go.
Classic. Every Zoom meeting has to have that. I'm glad we got it out of the way. I'd like to say it usually isn't me, but here we are. So hey, thank you so much for those kind words, Emily. I'm super excited to be here today. What I really want to do, or what I hope to do, I think many of you were at the conference in which we had Emily Savitz-Romer, and you also got a chance to talk to me a little bit or hear from me a little bit. And we don't have a ton of time today either. So I really want to just get into what is something we could do. So if you're out there in a school, in a region, or you're in a consortium in some way, what is something we could just start with? And so I want to back up a little bit and just share that personally, I have spent the last, a few years back, I went ahead and jumped into a graduate program, and having spent so much time working with Alaska Native students and seeing students with incredible potential either not actually make that transition to post-secondary or make it and not persist there, I really wanted to explore more about what we could do as a state to turn that data around. And I also had the opportunity to kind of look back as I have worked in Bethel and various places on what have worked. And it was clear to me that it wasn't just about making sure they had the right classes or that they had enough career exploration, but it was deeper and it was more personal than that. And so that's what landed me on some research specific about that cultural identity and what it does as far as as part of a college preparation program. And so that's kind of where I landed, is with the research, just really identifying that if we're going to attack this problem, we need to definitely attack the piece about academic preparation, but there's some cultural relevance there. We need to attack the navigation skills, which are skills about how do I get there? How do I access the systems, and how do I maneuver through systems? But again, there's some culturally relevance there. And in the middle and in the heart, we have to recognize that cultural identity building is key to what we do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. In the interest of time, I normally like to introduce myself a little bit more and share some pictures of my family and whatnot. But in the interest of time, I decided not to do that today. But for those of you who do not know me, I've been in Alaska, I don't know, for about 30 some years, but I did grow up in Minnesota, northern Minnesota, had some really hardworking family members and parents that raised me, and I am full-fledged, Midwesterner. And then I come out to Alaska, and I spent 20 years in Bethel, where I was so gifted with the generosity of the Yupik culture and folks helping me kind of experience that, and really learning what it meant to serve students from that culture out in Bethel Regional High School. And I was out there for 20 years. My children both went to Yupik Immersion School out there. Then I headed over to Mount Edgecombe High School. I've been at Mount Edgecombe High School for 6 years, in which I got to serve students from all over Alaska, and most of whom have stated before they come to Mount Edgecombe that college is something they want to do. And we have a pretty good college going rate, but surprise, surprise, even our persistent rate is really, really low. And then now I'm heading off, and I will be at Alaska Pacific University coming up next. So today we want to talk a little bit about that. You know, it's a follow-up to the conference. What can we do next? So, oops, I'm not actually slide showing. So the objectives we want to do today is deepen that understanding of cultural identity and development. Again, I'm not going to go too deep in that, otherwise we wouldn't have time to get our hands into a tool. I'm going to share an assessment tool. Ultimately, my graduate work, I came up with what could schools do if they came to this realization that they needed to be more culturally relevant in their college preparation model, but they didn't know where to start. What are some questions they could ask themselves? So we're going to take some time and look at that. And then lastly, part of what we're trying to do as a network is make sure as regions, you get a chance to think about how you work together to do some of that work. So just jumping back from the conference, thinking about that identity, where does it come from? And just to be clear, there are some identities that may be tied to groups that we're in, but everybody has their own personal identity. So you have a personal identity, and it does sometimes come from groups that you belong to, you know, gender, ethnic groups, those types of things. But it's not, you can't solely peg someone just based on group identification, obviously. It also comes from the community you grow up in, your family experiences, the social roles you've played, your experiences, what you've done culturally. So when we talk about identity, everybody's got one, and it comes from this kind of these layered places. I've talked a little bit, and this is a lot from Zaretta Hammond. A lot of people have read her work, which Culturally Responsive in the Brain. And I've shared this concept of the spectrum from individualism to collectivism. And my upbringing from northern Minnesota was very individualistic. You know, I grew up with those values of kind of being that rugged individual, being independent. I describe myself mostly, you know, on my individual traits, make your own choices, and my goals tended to be individualistic. Spending time in the Yupik culture, and most indigenous cultures are very collectivist. And that means that there's a real value on your interdependence. It's very community minded. Folks will sometimes describe themselves within the relationships that they have with others, with the land, etc. And there's a lot of community and family roles that help guide decisions, and goals tend to be tied to that group. So I've used the terms bears and wolves, and I'm definitely a bear. If you know those animals, they tend to have kind of those traits themselves, whereas wolves definitely work together and are very collectivist. So one of the jokes I like to say, or one of the images, is sometimes what we have particularly in rural Alaska, because we don't have enough Indigenous teachers yet to fill those roles. We have a lot of outside teachers coming in with a real strong kind of worldview, bear worldview, and a bunch of wolves in front of them. And we sometimes accidentally suggest that if you want to be successful in school, you've got to change who you are. You've got to be more bear-like. So kind of rethinking that. And additionally, to understand that school itself has an ideology, and school comes from the whole, you know, the idea of public schools in America is very, very strong, and is maybe a great ideal of America. But what we need to do is understand that that comes with its own ideology, and that ideology tends to be very connected with a white middle class or individualistic sort of ideology. So just recognizing that school has their own culture. What we talked about just very briefly after we heard Mandy Savitz-Romer is that just understanding this concept itself can shift some questions that you talk about with kids when you do some work around post-secondary. So we tend, very classically, what do you want to be? We talk a lot about how much money different jobs make, where do you want to live, that sort of thing, as opposed to just saying some questions like, how can you make a difference for your community? What's going to college going to mean for your family? How might your family support you in college? What are they going to need from you, or how is going to college going to support you? There's actually a lot of research about the conflict that kids come with that collectivist attitude, because in a lot of ways they feel a lot of obligation to do tasks at home. And so when they're away from college, they might be starting to feel like they don't belong at college, and they worry about who's doing their task, who's getting water, or who's, helping grandparents with wood, or whatever it is, whatever role they played. They also feel conflicted that they're not there to help with that. And so helping kids reframe that, being successful in college is ultimately going to give you other opportunities to help your family, and helping them understand how their family can support them when they're at college can kind of address some of those kind of conflicts they have. So core to all of this is a concept of kind of this transculturation, and that is some work from Huffman's in my research about when kids go off to college, often their initial feeling is alienation, feeling completely out of place. And if they successfully transition into kind of feeling kind of a cultural strength, which tends to keep them there, they go into self-discovery, which is like, oh, hey, I've got some personal strength from my culture. Then they shift into realignment, in which they can start to relate to both their native and mainstream culture settings, and use culture as a anchor, no matter which one they are accessing at that time. And then finally, participation, where they feel like they can fully bring their culture and heritage in as a source of strength. This might become a time when they feel comfortable being their authentic self in whatever environment they are in. So one of the concepts behind the tool that I have is, if this is a transculturation that happens when where they've been able to observe this happening for successful college students, how about if at high school we start to try and shift into self-discovery so they have a bit of a jump start? So you'll see that in the tool we're going to use. So one thing I wanted to do, and I think we've got time to do this, but what I just shared is a topic I could have shared that data for about 3 hours. Okay, so we got a quick glimpse of it, but hopefully it helps you remember what we talked about with Mandy Savitz-Romer. And I want us to take a little bit of a context of Alaska. So we're going to do a quick data dive, and I'm going to stop sharing here for a second, and I'm going to put a quick link in the chat. I think I'm going to here. Oops. And that link is going to take you to some slides, and I'm going to be quiet for about 3 minutes so you can page through whichever slides speak to you. There's about 5 slides of data. So just take a look at it, and then I'm just going to ask if I can get 3 volunteers to tell me something they noticed in the data. Okay.
Janelle, some individuals can't access the file.
Yeah, Dominique, so I went in, it is shared and I've got other people accessing it. So I'm guessing to refresh, or if you're on a state, state network, you might have Google Docs blocked and I am not able to help with that. Okay. So just about 5 more seconds to kind of wrap up what you're looking at. This is my cheater way to get just a quick few things done.
Share your slides so people can access. You may want to share your slides so they can see it.
Yep, I will be happy to do that. So can I get 3, I just on time, can I get about 3 of you willing to say a few things about what you noticed and or put it in the chat? And I will go ahead and share my screen and share the slides just for those folks that weren't able to see it. All right, anyone? I don't have any volunteers to say some things.
I'll say something,
Thank
but
you.
I have 3 screens, so I have to like try and navigate my mouse back to what I was looking at. I noticed on the very first slide that we have we're looking at Alaska Native and then statewide attainment rates, and statewide we have, bachelor's and certificates are kind of close and competing, and masters and associates similar. But if we're looking at Alaska Native, certificates is much higher than anything else, and 0 on doctorate.
Mhm.
And associate and bachelor is just kind of right on par, actually, with the doctorate for statewide at 4%.
Right. So one of the things that historically Alaska Native students have been targeted and funneled into certificate programs at as opposed to college, which is why I have a lot of focus on college. That said, if there's a kid who wants to go to a certificate program, I'm like raising the roof, that fantastic. But it is the reason why I tend to start with college as a term, just because of that historical tendency. Kathy, you have your hand up?
I do. Hi, sorry I was late. So I'm looking at the slide that says about the low cost burden, but it's still participation and program completions rank last. I'm kind of scratching my head about this too. I was reading some news in Washington State. They're continuing to give away free tuition, yet they're still declining in enrollments by double digits. So I've been scratching my head around that whole notion of it's not about the money, right? So I don't know. That's what's on top of my mind these days, is trying to figure that out.
Yep, it's not just about the money. And Marcy, you have your hand up?
I do. Hi, Janelle.
Hey.
Janelle and I work together at the Department of Education and Early Development. So I just want a little shout out there to her. My aha moment really is around slide 7, around the FAFSA. Alaska's the lowest participating or state that participates in the FAFSA. And I was on the small team that got the Alaska Performance Fellowship passed when I worked at DEED. And so that really surprises me, because we tried to make it as easy as possible. So it has to be about access or something around that. Or maybe, as Kathy pointed out and Janelle confirmed, we're funneling Alaska Native American Indian kiddos to certificate programs for whatever reason. So that just surprised me. I don't know that I have an answer or anything, but.
Nope, I'm glad that it surprised you. Sorry about that. Because there's been great work. The Alaska Performance Scholarship is great work. The low income barrier is because of great work to make sure kids have the money. It's something bigger than that. So thank you. That just kind of steps up into thinking about, for our Alaska Native students, it's not this like direct line. It's kind of this swirly line in and out of some really important things like cultural identity and such. And so we're going to look real quick. We're going to have very little time, but we're going to look at the Rethinking Readiness Assessment. And I'm going to talk about that. And this is the assessment I mentioned that I created to have high schools start thinking about what they could do. So it kind of looks like this, and it's designed for schools, and it has a purpose to have conversations, to create conversations. It could also be a place where you can figure out, okay, if all of these things are important, what's one or two things we could start working on, because either we're very low or we're nearly there and it doesn't take too much work. And it could potentially provide a high school an opportunity to set some goals and then see if they've improved. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to this assessment on the website. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to put the website. Oops. Sorry, I got to grab my website here and stick it in. Into my chat. If you jump onto that website, you're going to be looking at just what I'm looking at right now. Oops, now I changed my tab. And it's going to look like this. So this is my big college, graduate program. And you can explore it as much as you want, but we're going to go up to the self-assessment. And you can just click on self-assessment. You don't have to click on one of those three things. And what you're going to see is you're going to have access to this assessment, and you're going to have access to it in this form, this PDF you could print out, or you can do it as an online assessment. So I hope you're exploring with me right now. Don't feel like you can't explore with me. The online assessment is just going to give you the advantage to that is it has the exact same questions, but when you hit more information, it's going to take you to a rubric. And again, the rubric and some of the background information that's built in here is not so that you can accurately use this assessment and we can go out and do further research and this is going to be a reliable and viable thing. It's only about the discussions. And so the rubrics really, if you're sitting there with folks and they don't really know how to answer the question, they could go to more information. But with that, I'm going to go back to the main page. If you use the PDF, so if you open up the PDF form, you'll be able to look at it more quickly. And there's three categories. There's academic preparedness, there's cultural identity, and there's navigation skills. Each of them have 6 questions. So I'm going to tell you right now, the academic preparation is first because it's the stuff that is easiest for educators to talk about. It's not unlike things that we have talked about before, like how many Alaska Native kids do you have in your advanced classes? And if you are not routinely looking at that, you need to do something about it. However, if you go down, it'll get tougher. Like the last one is, our school includes academic instruction that recognizes and values Native ways of knowing. Native knowledge is presented as valid and academic, and we avoid presenting Western knowledge systems as superior. So a little bit deeper in thinking about how culture and academics is presented in your school. If you go to the cultural identity and those 6 questions, they're all pretty big. They're probably, and some of it is just, do we have open discussions about what it means to indigenize our spaces or to decolonize? I mean, those can be, some of those terms, depending on your environment, can be a little bit lightning rod. So here's what I'm going to tell you. I've given permission for folks to make some adjustments if they want to on this, if it means the conversations will be able to be had in their schools. But it also talks about things. Do we actually help kids practice self-identity now that we know it's a college assistive factor? Okay. And how might we do that? The Indigenous Spaces one, all of our universities in the state have been figuring this out and have been putting more and more effort into their Native student services or their rural student services, because they're finding when kids have those Indigenous spaces where they feel comfortable and like they're their fully authentic self, they actually then can navigate the rest of college more easily. And then the last one is navigation. And this is about how do we help kids do all that? How do we make sure they have enough money? How do we make sure they know how to complete their FAFSA? Those are all really important, but there's some things in here too. So when we're helping kids pick colleges, how do we avoid projecting our own values and actually help kids explore what their values are? So when they select a college, it's based on some of their own needs. So with that, we need to jump into our breakout. And what I'm going to ask everybody to do, has everybody been able to, can you give me a thumbs up if you've got a screen? Has everybody been able to get onto that website? Okay, yeah. I'm going to have you just look at the assessment from that website as opposed to another activity I had. Okay, it looks like I have somebody. So I'm going to work with the people who haven't been able to get on there. I'll work with you individually. But let's go ahead. We're going to get into some breakout rooms. And I want you to just select one question from each category. And you might even want to start with cultural identity because it's the most interesting. Because you, as a group, you won't have time. You only have about 5 minutes. So just pick one question and explore it. How's that sound? And then we'll come back at 3:40. Okay. Awesome. Okay, Dominique, it just took me a little bit longer. I mean, I thought I could get them into the breakout groups a little bit faster, but it'll be fine. I'll just, when we come back, I won't do any wrap up from those. I'll just go right into Chuck and Emily to keep us on.
Sounds good. So do you want me to close all rooms now?
Yep, because we're at 3:39, right? You better.
Okay. Yep, so they have 1 more minute. The breakout rooms will close in 50 seconds.
Yep, that's
Okay.
what I'll do. It'll go
Mhm.
in that last minute.
I hit the wrong button.
I kicked myself out of my session by accident.
Oh, well, we're closing anyway, and I know we don't have much time, so hopefully it just gives people access and they know how to use it from here forward.
Here we go.
Okay, I hope you all enjoyed that really quick. Everything went just a little bit quicker than we always hope, but I don't want to take any time from our next amazing speakers. So I hope what you got out of that is just a chance to know where it's at and a chance to have your team access it at another time if it makes sense for you. Very, very open, and I'll work with anybody. Like I said, if there's some things you need to adjust with it for your own setting, we can certainly do that. So now to not take time, I want to share, I get to introduce your next speakers who are amazing. I've gotten to work with them through the AlaskaCAN, try that project, which also has some of those shared goals of doing some identity building. So just to tell you, you're going to hear from Chuck Sika and Emily Brockman. So Chuck is the Director of Youth Programs at the Alaska Humanities Forum, and he wrote the grant for AlaskaCAN project. He grew up in Bethel, where he attended youth immersion and Bethel Regional High School, while somebody else was there as well. He served as a college and career guide there, helped my own kid with ACPE at BRHS, and he holds a bachelor's degree in public policy and sociology from Pomona College and a master's degree in public policy from Harvard. Emily Brockman is the program manager for the AlaskaCAN project at the Alaska Humanities Forum. She grew up in Dillingham and graduated from high school in Seward. She has a degree in education from Duke University and previously served as the curriculum manager for the Take Wing, Denguli, I don't know how to say that one, Denguluni project. But what I really want you to know about them is from some introductions they did with our students. So Chuck is from Bethel and the Kuskokwim, and he gives goofiness and caringness to the world. And Emily is, this one listed that I wanted. She is from the muddy waters of Bristol Bay and the sharp mountains of Seward, and she is inspired by the stories people carry. So Chuck and Emily, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Janelle. I'm going to share my screen quickly, and then we will start going through things. Can I get a thumbs up if people can see the screen? I assume you can. All right. So we're here today to talk about the AlaskaCAN project, which is a project that both Emily and I work on, and we partner with Mount Edgecombe High School as well. So broadly, we're going to just do a really quick overview of kind of the program and the way we think about it. And then we're going to do like a short example activity to give you an idea of what we do. So we'll just kind of show you a photo and then throw you into short breakout rooms for discussions. And then we'll come back to do Q&A after that. Let me click through. So just to start off with the organization, the Alaska Humanities Forum is based in Anchorage. We're right down in Ship Creek. We're the State Humanities Council for the state. Every state has one, and we are this one. And our mission is to connect Alaskans through stories, ideas, and experiences that positively change lives and strengthen communities. And we see this project as being core to that. You got to hear kind of the title piece, so I won't do that piece of the introduction. But I think the reason this work feels so important to me is both growing up in Bethel and then going to school in Los Angeles. A lot of shock factors there, and figuring out how to succeed in that, as well as working at the high school in Bethel and just seeing time after time that the ones who succeeded after they left were the ones who had a deeper reason and understanding about why they were going and how it served themselves, their families, and their communities, rather than just doing it because someone told them they should do it. So I'll pass it to Emily to introduce herself real quick.
Awesome. I see a couple of familiar faces from Bristol Bay, Waka, Casey, and Angela. Super excited to be here with you all and the rest of the folks. But yes, my name is Emily Maruvilok Brockman, originally born and raised in Dillingham and then graduated from Seward High School. My mom is Yupik from Aleknigik and Togiak, and my dad is hardy Midwestern farm guy from Iowa. And so I kind of get to stick my fingers in both parts of that identity. But yeah, I, like Chuck, I think grew up with a lot of cultural values that were really connected to the different stories that were passed just through different people in our lives, with our elders, through our parents. And I think from those cultural values of being able to sit and listen to the stories of people who were older than you, really shaped the type of work that I wanted to do, which was to serve my community through education and through English, through storytelling. And so the fact that I'm able to do this work is really awesome. So I'll pause there and we'll kind of jump into the presentation portion. Great. So as an organization, we've really shifted to using this lens, the anatomy of transformation, to reflect through all of our work. And our work is rooted in the head, hands, heart model so that it can both benefit us as an organization, but especially benefit the communities and the individuals who our programs are serving. Because without the head, hands, heart, without the head with the reflection, imagination, and vision, the hands, which is the skills, tools, and projects, and the heart, which is the inspiration, values, and relationships, we're really not able to have that full person or that full community fully present in the programming. And so in order to maximize the value that folks are able to take away from the programming, we really want them to be able to bring their whole selves into a space. And so that's what this model is used for. And within this kind of context for the presentation, it can be kind of connected back to Janelle's work, which is the head would be navigating the post-secondary institutions or information. Hands would be kind of that preparation or that skills or tool set. And then the heart is tapping into that identity piece that the students are, how they identify and what cultural identities that they hold.
So the project itself is called the Ilakujavak project, which means being together in Yuhtun. It was named by Mark John, who's an elder from the region. It's a partnership with the Alaska Native Heritage Center, and it's funded by an ANF grant through the US DOE. The structure, there's kind of three different components. One is year-long cohorts where we bring a group of 15 students to a rural site in the summer. They work together virtually once or twice a month through the whole school year and then travel again to an urban site at the end of the year. And they're with the same group of students. So we'll be serving about 45 kids in that this year. 2-day intensives, which we do with Mount Edgecombe High School, where we go on site and work with students over 2 days. And then these much shorter term, kind of 1 to 2 hour workshops that we do when we're asked to come in and work with folks on a quicker scale.
Great. And I can kind of jump into the house. It's our team. My team is usually doing the boots on the ground work. So to dive into the cultural understanding, the AlaskaCAN really emphasizes that cultural knowledge and giving space for students to bring their cultural identity into the room as an essential part of that post-secondary transition for youth. Because you can't be successful if you're not able to bring like your whole self to a space. And so we like to intentionally build in conversations around culture and identity, as well as work very intentionally with different culture bearers who are specific to a region or to an area. And we really do believe that this is on par, just as important as the academic and soft skills portions of the programming that we also do. Within that kind of cross-cultural learning, a huge part of the grant's goals is to make sure that we're doing cross-regional relationships with students from all around the state. And so not only are we visiting physically different parts of the state for our immersions, but we also have the program itself is open to all kids across the state. And we want to have a very varied and diverse group of Alaska Native students, which currently for our cohorts we do. And then within the immersions portion, we really think that there is a lot of value for youth to be able to travel to a new place and physically experience, meeting their peers, learning from culture bearers specific to a region, and being able to spend time with different groups. And within that too, also the self-reflective learning portion, which is, youth are able to explore new ideas in programs. And that's being able to give space for them to reflect as a whole group and individually and independently is just as important as the information that they're learning and is a key part to how they are going to retain that information. Awesome. So we are going to be doing a kind of demo of what some of that curriculum might look like for you by using a springboard from a student named Moses Guest, who's got some text to follow along. Then we're going to do 6-minute breakout groups with some questions. So I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste those questions into the chat so folks can reference them. It's okay if you do not get to all of the questions, but this is just a way for us to demonstrate something that we would do in a session with students. So take the next 2 minutes or so to silently read to yourself the excerpt. Feel free to look at the photo and note any observations that you have, and then we'll go into breakout groups.
You've all been invited to breakout rooms, so feel free to go and discuss the three questions that were posted into the chat.
welcome back to the folks. I know our breakout groups have been going by very quickly, but as Chuck said in our previous one, I promised that we were giving kids more time to reflect on these questions and wrestle with these really big ideas when it comes to culture and identity and other things. So the true intent of this was really to kind of give you a piece and a snippet, either to spark your curiosity and or just to give you an overview or a brief idea of some of the work that we do with kids. And I know one of the reflections that we've gotten back from the students and the teachers or the educators that we're working with is that they really don't get a lot of time in their school or personal lives to be able to sit and think on these questions about who they are, their values, or their culture. And so it's really cool to be able to give them that space within our programming. So I'll pause there.
So we were just going to quickly share a few comments we've gotten from students, kind of to brag about the students, also a little bit of bragging about ourselves, and then take the last 5 minutes for Q&A, whatever folks want to ask. But just here's 3 quotes we got at the Mount Edge Intensive did when we went down to Sitka and saw Janelle and her students. Taking away that there are many reasons you should go to college, even though there is some bad stuff, there's still the good stuff, and you can always overcome the hardship. I like to talk about culture and identity. I like that we were all able to engage in the conversation because I feel that it's usually always the adults talking. And a lot of us are similar and are going through the same things. None of us are alone, and if needed, we can lean on each other for support. And I think one of the things that really stuck out to me from the EdgeCOME piece was how engaged and talkative students were when you gave them the opportunity to talk about themselves and their families and their communities and their cultures. And we just never had trouble getting all the students to participate and engage in what we were working on. So we have, I think, maybe 3 or 4 minutes left. I'm sure Dominica will keep us in line if we run too long, but feel free to throw any questions in the chat or raise your hand if you want to ask us anything.
Chuck, there are a couple of questions in the chat box.
Let me work on my tech skills and we will pull those up. So can schools that were not previously partnering with the AlaskaCAN still participate in some way? Absolutely. You can shoot one of us an email, probably Emily. So I think for kind of this school year, we're obviously coming to the end of it, and I don't think we could pull anything off, but we do these shorter term workshops throughout the school year, both with after school clubs and also with classrooms. So Emily, if you want to post your email into the chat, you can shoot her an email and can work on setting something up if you have students, or if you just want to chat about what we do. Do we have any connection to the Alaska Native Cultural Charter School in Anchorage? We are not explicitly partnering with them. We work with the Alaska Native Heritage Center, and I believe it's because we mostly work with high school students and the charter school only goes through 8th grade. So we just have not worked with that age range yet. And then, could you tell us about the previous work as a college guide and getting those FAFSA rates up? Sure, happy to, and I'm not going to take all the credit for this. It was Janelle and years of work, but I think what Emily is referring to is that my second year as a college and career guide, I think we had about 85% of students filled out the FAFSA in the class, and we had 3 get into Stanford and 1 get into Brown out of like 40 kids, and just also a lot of other folks going off and doing amazing things. While I didn't have the language for it then, I think most of the work I was doing was in the navigation space, and then also maybe kind of unskilledly, but also in that heart space and just being there. Like my job was all day, every day, getting to know the students and their families and just being there and having the time to figure out what it was they actually wanted to go and do and sitting there and just talking through that with them. And I think the whole school really built up a culture of that post-secondary and going off, and it started before me and ended after me, or continued after me. But I will say there was a striking difference in the school culture between when I went to high school there and then when I came back, which was just 4 years later. So I got to kind of see and be part of this pretty cool transformation in the school in that short time. All right. Well, thank you all for inviting us to speak. Any last thoughts, Emily, before we pass it back to them? No? All right. I think we are passing it over to Julia to introduce the next group.
Actually, Julia's not here right now, I don't believe, and it doesn't look like our next speaker is available. So I was going to check with Mark. Mark, are your students available? Can you guys go now or?
Let me look and see if they are on here. I will text them because I was just.
Oops, wait a minute.
It looks like Leslie is here.
Leslie is here.
So I will be happy to give an introduction. Wonderful. Well, Leslie Vines, her career path has focused on social reform of low-income or socially disadvantaged adults, youth, and children. She began her career with 9-Star Education and Employment Services, and her passion for improving communities for all people really ignited. She is currently the statewide youth program coordinator with the State of Alaska Department of Labor and Workforce Development. And Leslie has leveraged her keen knowledge of programs and policies to provide professional development and community building to thousands of individuals in our community here in Anchorage. She is a new board of director with AlaskaCAN. She jumped right in to serve as secretary. Sorry, we didn't see you amongst all of these Anchorage Mat-Su names. So we are happy to welcome Leslie Vines, our next speaker.
Hello, hello, hello. It's good to see everyone, and I'm here to speak about some services that we have through the Department of Labor that will support this 65 by 2025. So my name is Leslie. I have been in Alaska since 1995. All 3 of my daughters was born here in this great state, as well as my granddaughter. And as was mentioned, I do have a passion for people to succeed. So just to give you a little information about what I do as the at-risk youth coordinator, prior to COVID, the commissioner of the Department of Labor, Dr. Tamika Ledbetter, along with the commissioner for Health and Social Services, Adam Crum, got together and they formed this at-risk initiative. The whole purpose of the at-risk initiative was to ensure that no Alaskan youth was left behind or missed out on opportunity to engage into employment and training programs. So statewide, we have lots of employment and training programs, and we want to support our youth. So the focus with at risk initially was youth that may be in a treatment or detention center and foster care youth. So we have went to pretty much all the treatment facilities statewide, and we have engaged with most of our school districts. We have been to Juneau, Seward, Fairbanks, Bethel. Pretty much if anybody let us in, we have went there to engage our young people. And doing that engagement, it actually kind of mimics a lot of the things that we have been talking about today. So again, we have numerous of employment and training programs. We have AvTech, we have vocational rehab, we have our job centers, we have our WIOA youth providers. We have a lot of things, and we're constantly looking for new grantees to come enjoying this mission of making sure that all Alaskans have opportunities. So while we was doing our outreach, we noticed the missing of soft skills or essential skills. And this goes along with even the cultural identity. Doing like when I read Mandy's article and then looking at Janelle work, when you're looking at cultural identity, it's like, who am I? And we know when we look at old psychoanalysis and psychoanalysts, we look at the stages of adolescence. We have also seen that the age for adolescence have moved. Like right now, the stages for adolescence is like from 10 to 24. But we know our young people learn at different steps. Just with the presenters before, we talked about time. That's what a lot of our young people need is time. And I believe with every agency, whatever school district, whatever treatment facility, I see caring professionals. Everybody is doing a great job, but more time. A lot of our young people just need more time. Going around statewide, I have heard from young people that they love when we come in and present information and new resources, but they need additional time to learn the resources. When I was in Juneau, I met with some young people that was working on their GEDs. They both fell out of school around about the 10th grade. From their perspective in their high school career, about 10th grade, if you wasn't the smartest kid, they felt like they got pushed aside and they eventually dropped out. And we are serving them in one of our WIOA youth providers. But like with our at-risk kids, we also noticed that even though we were targeted ones that may have already been affiliated with the criminal justice system, or maybe had dropped out, or maybe we was looking at foster care youth, we also noticed that even young people that was in two-parent household still needed our help. So one of the things that we like to encourage our young people is that we want you to tell your friends about these services. We have a lot of services, but they're only as good as the young person knowing about them and being able to use them. So again, what we're doing now with our outreach, we have solved the need of soft skills or essential skills. And so as we work with young people, I'm thinking of a group in the Valley. We work with the ABLE program, which is the high school recovery program. A lot of the young people, it's the soft skills. And we have heard that from employers. We have heard that from universities or trade schools. And like even the definition of post-secondary. Like I myself, I have a master's degree. Every one of my brothers and sisters, they all have master's degrees. But my parents, my mom only went to the 3rd grade. My dad went to the 9th. But we grew up in a family where it was known. So, and a lot of our young people, whether we're looking at our refugees, we're looking at our Alaska Native youth, a lot of our young people are very capable. They just need to hear that you are capable. And so that's what our mission is as the At-Risk Youth Initiative, is that you are capable. Another thing, as we've been working with young people the last 2 or 3 years, that title, At-Risk Youth, you will never probably hear that again. Nobody wants to be known as an at-risk youth. So it's empowering our youth. And as we go through our different schools, our homeless shelters, we're seeing young people that may have a learning disability or a learning difficulty. So like reading Manny's article, reading Janelle's feedback, like everything is there. But what's the answer? Is time. And like we want to give that time. So right now, we will be beginning this fall providing soft skills, providing work ethics. Most of our young people, by the time you finish high school, the 12th grade, you really have all the skills that you need for life. Yes, they will go to college or a trade school to learn a hard skill, but it's those soft skills, and I think they break all cultures. So like the first soft skills in bringing your A game curriculum, that we will be using is like attitude. And so I think these soft skills, the 7 elements that we will be covering with our young people, will be cross all cultures. And it's what our employers want. So a part of the Department of Labor, not only are we working with participants, we're working with our employers and knowing what they want. Like, you have to show up. So whether you're going to AbTech, you're going to a university, or you're going to school, like, you have to show up. And then some young people actually need resources. The Department of Labor, we have resources for young people 16 or older to support them. Like, sometimes getting up, do you have an alarm clock? It can be that simple. So working with the young kids is what we are focusing on now. And so far, within the last year, we have engaged over 700 young people. And they find us. We don't have anything fancy to go get them. They all find us. So in our message, we ask our young people to go tell their friends, to go tell their family members. Also, as we're working with young people, and I speak this to my leadership a lot, when you see a young person that's struggling, chances are the parent also needs support. So again, Department of Labor, we have programs that can help not only the young person find their career path, but also their parents. And then I love this discussion. And also on the AlaskaCAN website, we have like post-secondary options. So like, it's still kind of standard that when you say post-secondary, people's minds automatically go to college. But post-secondary is not only college. It can be a college, but it can be a trade school, it can be apprenticeship. So again, when I see a young person that already has it blocked off, I can't do it. Again, step by step, why are you having problems? And sometimes their challenges may not be relevant to their goal, but you have to spend time with them to show them that. So I'm excited about this opportunity. I'm excited to work with our young people to engage, and we're excited to work closely with our school district this fall to again help kids to bring your A game. Because if they can bring their A game in that 4 years of high school, which is their first academic career, like, you're not going to start when you finish high school, you have started in high school. And if you're having challenges with meeting the expectation of high school, we want you to work with us, because we may, when I say we, the Department of Labor and Workforce Development, we may have some services that can support those kids. So I'm going to leave this off with another shout of our WIOA youth providers. We have WIOA youth providers statewide that assist young people in not dropping out. And if they do drop out, we do have resources to help them get their GED. Like, one of my best friends is a Ivy League graduate. She has her doctorate, but she started off with a GED. So again, we see hope in everybody. And another thing is assessments. A lot of the young people, they just need more conversation and more assessments. Working with some of the young people in detention centers, those strength-based assessments have been golden. They are already in a detention center, so I'm sure they are realizing they have made some mistakes. But so we're not going in talking about what you did wrong. We are helping them learn who they are and the strengths that they do right, and they can carry on into some of our employment and training programs and jobs that we have now. So I know that was a lot of information, but Dominic and the whole team have my contact information. Again, this is a statewide initiative. I do have a partner, Robert, I'm sure he's online. And together, we try to link young people up to our employment and training program, and we have plenty. So if you have any questions, I'm here. And I also will put my email address into the message so you can email me at your convenience.
All right, thank you so much, Leslie. That was great. Next, we're going to have Mark introduce the next speakers. Mark?
I gotta see if they're on. We're a little early. I think they were supposed to start at 4:25, but
I think they just came on. I thought I just saw them come on.
okay. So
Mike is here for sure.
Mike is here, and is Yosti on?
I just texted Yosti, so.
So we're running a little bit early. So yeah, I was just texting with her, and I know she's coming on. So let me get the introductions here, and
I gotta adjust my camera.
yeah. And then I know Yosti had a presentation, I think, right? That she'll share her
and if
screen.
she can't pull it up, then I have it as well.
Okay. Well, Michael, yeah, I don't know how you guys wanted to proceed, but if you wanted to pull it up, or let's see if she's on here.
It looks like she's coming on right now.
Okay, perfect. And I'll introduce them, and I'll let them take it away. So you guys will have a little extra time, it looks like.
Sounds good.
Hello.
Oh, hey, Yosti. Okay, I'll just introduce you two, and then you guys can take it away. You'll be able to share your screen. I believe it's open to multiple users, right? Yeah. And so, and then you can go from there. So Yosti Storm Alaka is Inupiaq from Unalakleet, Alaska. She is a UAA ANSIP alumna and senior director for the Alaska Native Science and Engineering Programs middle school component, and a full-time MBA candidate at the University of Washington Foster School of Business. Michael Kitoraya, is that right, Oron?
I'll let it pass.
From Chivac, Alaska. He is also a UAA ANSEP alumna, having completed the bachelor's in civil engineering and master's in engineering management, and is the senior director for the ANSEP High School Acceleration Component. Okay, you guys can take that away. 2 success stories that'll share about their cultural identity and their experiences.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen because we did put a few slides together. So Mike, did you wanna kick it off?
Sure. So hello, everybody. My name is Michael Kituralga Olron, and thanks to AlaskaCAN for introducing or inviting us to speak. And thank you, Mark, for the introduction. So as Mark had stated, I'm from the village of Chivac, and I grew up in Chivac, so that's where it's located, right on the coast of the Bering Sea, or pretty much directly west of Anchorage, all the way at the coast. And there's about 1,100 people that live there now. So graduated from high school there. And if you want to see what Chivac looks like, that's the view from my parents' kitchen window. So that's on the edge of town. That's the view that I grew up seeing, the village of Chivac. Very flat, no trees, and everybody knows everybody, and we're all cousins, aunts, and uncles. So after I graduated from high school, I had moved to Anchorage to attend college, and that's where I learned about ANSEP. So I'll share a little bit about what my journey was for moving from Chivac to Anchorage, and what it was that helped me to become successful. So when I first moved to Anchorage, I had, I just graduated from high school, top of the class. There was 30 others in my graduating class in Chivac, which is kind of large for like a village. And then I moved and took the math and English placement test at the university, and I was placed into the lowest level math and English courses that the university had to offer. So it was like 0 level math, 0 level English. And that was after I had completed pre-calculus and advanced English in high school. And so I failed, which those, that 0 level math, just to put it in perspective, that 055 math is most comparable to pre-algebra, and I had just finished high school as a pre-calculus student. And I failed that math 055 course. And I just spoke last week to the UAF graduating class of ANSEP students, and I looked at my transcript and I shared with them that I failed over about 2.5 years worth of classes, because it took me 8 years to go from graduating high school to get graduated with my bachelor's degree, which is what this picture is here. In 2014, I got my bachelor's degree 8 years after going to school full time and failing 2.5 years of college, and graduated with the first from my village to receive an engineering degree. And a big part of what helped me to be successful was, if you go to the next slide, I held on to my TRIPIC values that we learned growing up in my village, because our elders would come by to the school quite a bit, and these are a list of the values. I'm not going to go over each and every one, just a couple of them that really helped me was, there's one of them is never give up trying to do what you set your mind on. And that's something that I really held on to. It really stuck with me, that no matter how many times you give up or how many times you fail, that you don't have to give up. So that was, I think, the biggest one, and it's kind of stuck onto me. And I don't want to go too much longer, but if you go to the next slide, a big part of it was ANSEP. I didn't start passing my classes until I started engaging with the ANSEP community. That's where I met all of my classmates from other villages going into engineering degree programs. We had group study sessions. We went out to movies together. We really built this community, which I got involved with. And having a community there with people that have the same mindset as what you have makes a huge difference. And that's where I met a lot of my good friends, and we checked in with each other to make sure that we're going to class, completing homework. And I was able to not only get my bachelor's, but my master's in engineering, all as an ANSEP student. So that's what I wanted to share, was having a community, a group of friends, a family that are there with you is critical in being successful. And I'll turn it over to Yosti next.
Okay. Hi. Thanks for having us this afternoon. I was just looking at who's on the call. I recognize some people, so hi. So I'm Yosti Storms, and I'm Inupiaq, and I'm from Unalakleet, but I live here in Anchorage. My Inupiaq name is Oligak. And so like Mike, I grew up also in a pretty small community, and I would say that for me, community is a big reason I feel like I was able to make it through my university experience, just by having like my community from home there to support me, and then, you know, my family, and then also having like the ANSEP community there as I made my way through all my college courses. So there's Unalakleet, also on the Bering Sea, so coastal. And like Mike, my Inupiaq values, I feel like played a huge part in just being able to move forward throughout college. And I would say actually a big one for me would probably be humor, because, you know, college isn't all easy. Big surprise there. So I think, you know, having a good sense of humor through all of it, you know, helped a lot. And then also just being hard work and responsibility to tribe. And I'll just say, like, it's also just responsibility to your community. So I feel like the biggest reason why I wanted to get a college education was so that I could, you know, do something, and then that would give back to my community. So for me, I think that was a big reason for going to college and continuing to go through it. And I mentioned earlier, or Mark mentioned when he was introducing me, I am a full-time student right now. I'm a hybrid MBA candidate at the Foster School of Business through the University of Washington. But I am also the first in my family to graduate from college. And I graduated in 2015 from the University of Alaska Anchorage with my Bachelor's of Science in Natural Sciences. And yeah, and ANSEP played a big part in that and helping me also continue my education while working full-time here for the program.
Thank you, Yusti and Mike. So now we have time for questions, and we actually will have a little extra time. So if anybody has questions for them, now's a good time to ask from and let them share. There's in the chat.
Hi, Michelle. I see your hand.
Hi,
Yeah.
thank you. I just wanted to say congratulations to both of you and what you've overcome. And thank you for sharing your stories. I think sometimes people just see the end results and don't recognize, you know, what struggles people had to go through to get through their degrees. And I think at least for college students, social media has just made that even more challenging because people just post the happy stuff out there. And so when students are struggling in college and they see all that out there, they think it's just them. And so thank you for sharing your stories.
Thank you, Michelle.
Other questions for them? I see a hand. Shelley?
Hey, yeah, I would echo what Michelle said and thanking you. And, you know, especially Mike, what you were talking about with feeling like here you passed these higher level classes and then it was like you had to go backwards, and how that must have felt, and being able to share that with other students is so critical in helping them realize and helping students realize that you know, we're not always going to be, you know, starting out exactly where we might think we want to be. And that perseverance is so important. I would love to get copies of those charts that both of you put up there. And I'd love to get more for other Alaska Native groups around the state. Those would be really helpful for me and the students that I talk with. So thank you guys.
Yeah, I see we got a question in the chat. It says, Michael, what helped you persist prior to ANSEP when you had to take remedial classes and struggled to get passing grades? That is great that you did that. So what is it that helped you persist prior to ANSEP?
So thinking back when my first couple of years, really like 3 years of college, that was when I failed a class pretty much every semester. I didn't feel like initially that I was behind. I thought that where I started was where everybody else started. And the reason I thought that was all of my other buddies from other villages were also in those same classes that I was in. So I didn't know that I was behind. I just knew that I felt like I was where I needed to be, even though I wasn't. So I wasn't aware of that. And when I realized where I was, where I had been placed in my university courses and how many years I was behind from other students, like there were students younger than me taking calculus and I was taking pre-algebra. I felt pretty embarrassed about that. I felt like I was academically unprepared. I felt like I wasn't smart enough. And so I shied away from interacting with other students. And I wanted to, in a way, catch up before, like, here's everybody else. And I wanted to catch up so that I could then have, I guess, feel like I'm smart enough to have conversations about the courses that we're taking with other students. But then what kept me going was that I kept thinking that if there are so many other students like me, you know, taken from the village, from other villages, attempting to go to college, and they are in the same place that I was, that if I could do it, then it can show other students that it's possible, that it's not just a thing for me that I'm doing. It's something that I am doing for others to see that it's possible. That's really what kept me going. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. I do have a question for you guys. Maybe you could share what drove you to go to college. Was it something within your communities? Was there something at the school? What is it that led you to enroll and go through those processes? And then there's a question after this one.
So I could share mine real quick. So my mom went to college and got her teaching certificate. So that was, and then all of my siblings all had attempted to go to college, but none of them, except for one other of my sibling, got their bachelor's. And so having a family that went to, saw college, higher education as being important was a big influence. And then also I took a personality education, like what job would best fit you, and it was civil engineering. I had no idea what it was, but that's what I listed as my degree program, and then learned about what civil engineering is after I started attending college. So family and that test is what I remember.
I'll add to Mike. So personally for me, when it was in seventh grade, middle school. I was in middle school actually, and I had this teacher from home who is from my hometown, and he ended up going to college and coming back as an educator. And I remember we had an assembly, and he had shared with not just our class, but like the whole school during this assembly that education gives you the opportunity to either want to live here, like live in Unalakleet and stay there, or to move out. And so I think in middle school, realizing the different opportunities that education can afford you made a big difference in how I feel like I viewed it. So for me, it was that assembly when I was in middle school. And then also just realizing that there's so much out there, and that you could do a lot with the education.
Bessie, you had a question, and then we'll go to the chat. There's some questions.
Thank you. Lower my hand before I forget. So I was wondering, sorry, I'm Bessie Weston from Mikoyak. I think I actually went to UAA at the same time as you, Mike. I recognize your face. But I wondered, did either of you use, or what resources did you use while at UAA or before UAA? Did you use a counselor? I personally did not. I was too shy or embarrassed to ask for help. So I guided my way entirely myself through college. I know that there's the Alaska Native, there's a center there on campus. I did not really use that either. I was too shy and embarrassed. So I wondered, what resources did you use, and were they helpful? Thank you.
For me, it was being a part of ANSEP, but I also went to Manechcum, and I feel like meeting other students from across the state who are also interested in going to college after graduating from high school. I think just having each other was a big thing, because I felt like we motivated each other, and then also we were going through a similar experience. And so I think using my peers as a resource was a big thing in high school. And then, yeah, at the university level, having ANSEP And then also being a part of different clubs on campus too, like ACES was big. And then I also helped having a sister and family or cousins who were also going through the university experience. That helped too.
And along with Yoski, I had a sister as well that was here on campus. So that was a really big help, having family. And then I also did utilize Native Student Services, or NSS, which is what I think you were referring to. So NSS, and then there was also the Chamai Room. I had a community there in the Chamai Room. And then I actually became one of the student employees as a peer mentor at the Chamai Room. And I would host Native games, Native dancing. We used to watch every November. I would host smoke signals and make your own fry bread night. And then I also worked as a resident advisor. So I got really involved with the university after a couple of years of being in that, that phase of catching up. And once I did get involved, it was just the more I utilized resources on campus, the easier it was to navigate through everything. But I do understand that, you had stated that you were too shy to ask for help. It's what it was like for me as well, the first couple of years.
Well, thank you, Yosti and Michael. It's time for our breakout sessions. And we really appreciate you being here. And I know there's a lot more questions there. Sorry, we don't have enough time to go on with those. But we'll be breaking out in groups by region now.
All right, thanks for having us.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Do you just hop off?
Yeah, you can hop
Okay.
off. And I know, I think Dominica is setting us up in groups, or somebody is.
Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your afternoon, everybody.
Thank
And
you.
if you have any
Thank you.
students,
Thank you.
if you want it to direct any students to myself or Mike, we'd be happy to talk to them about our experiences and maybe, and give them resources.
Thank you so much, Mark and everybody. Janelle, are you going to introduce what we're going to be doing in the breakout sessions?
I sure am. So hopefully you were quite inspired by all of this talk, and hopefully it's got your brain kind of moving quickly about what's most relevant for you in your role to help move the work forward, so that we're capturing a few more students and we're utilizing what we now know is such a huge assistive factor, this knowing who you are and finding your community and creating those connections. So with that said, we're going to put you in regional groups. That's why you've put yourself in there by region. And we're going to ask you to think about two things and kind of put some notes down on a Padlet, or I mean on a Jamboard. And the first is, what's already going on in your region that maybe you just need to make some connections. You need to connect people to, this event, or, when we listen to the into what Chuck and Emily are doing, maybe you can just connect to that very existing activity. The next question is, if there's a hole, what as you as a region could do? What could you guys start regionally or through a partnership that might start to fill this hole? Does that make sense, those two questions? Give me a thumbs up if it does. All right, great. And there's the Jamboard link. And so we'll give you some time to do that together, and then we'll come back to at the end.
Dominica, are you there?
Yes, Pearl, hi.
Hi. Hey, I need to just hang out here for this breakout. So let me just, do you mind if I stay in this room? I'll just
Oh,
stand.
no, not a problem.
Okay. Okay. And I'm actually going to send you an email to give you my new email address. And so if you would
Okay, thanks for all coming back. We just have a few minutes, but what we hope that each region will just kind of highlight something about their Jamboard. And if you're not used to Jamboards, what's great is hopefully you found your region and figured out how to put stickies on. I'm sorry I didn't give those instructions, but you can take a peek at everybody else's region. And that's on purpose because yes, we want you to collaborate in your region, but there are some great people and great opportunities happening outside of your region that maybe you can also grab. But if we're willing, if we can go region to region, and I'll start at the end instead of the beginning here. So can we get the northern region to start us off and just maybe share some kind of aha that you had in your conversation, either something you guys have already going or what's.
Well, the aha was we don't have enough people in the northern region. I think I was the only one, or we had one other. So we need to get more people. I think a lot of people were, when we talked, and somebody else can jump in here too, is there are programs going on. We had a number of them that are outreaches. In Fairbanks, they shared about Rawhide, but it was a mixed region. And so we had people sharing what they do in their different parts of the regions. Up here, we definitely used a different ANCEPT and Rawhide and AlaskaCAN and things like that. Anybody else want to say anything or comment from our group? If not, we'll let somebody else share.
Yeah, I think that was good. I just added a little note of who our region was mixed with. So yeah.
Awesome. And that can be a big aha, is how do we maybe get together a little bit more as a region? How about interior?
We also had a smaller group, but I think we didn't get a ton down, mostly because we were chatting and had some pretty large kind of moments in here. But I think probably the big ones, it was an aha moment for me. I think maybe with your talk, Janelle, and some other things kind of putting it together. But visiting with the Anchorage School District last week, I was thinking about also connecting apprenticeships and workforce, incorporating some kind of cultural identity into those groups as well, so that students, are incorporating into their, identity into that as well. So, bringing professors into high school so that you can show them, here's an Alaska Native professor, here's what you can do. Giving them, kind of that kind of reach. And then also translating cultural skills into post-secondary skills, or even job skills, workforce skills. So those were kind of the big ones that we talked about.
Thank you. Very cool. Cool ideas. How about Anchorage Mat-Su? And I've got a 1 and 2, and I don't know if you guys were in the same room. So. Anyone? Anchorage Mat-Su, come on, nobody's brave.
I can jump in. We were in 2 different breakouts, and for the board too, something that came up was just thinking about tracking students. So thinking about whether we're working, one individual is in an organization that gives out scholarships to students, but wondering what actually happens to those students that have received the scholarships. And then thinking about other organizations that are working with students before they get to college, thinking about, is that tracking happening? Are they going to college after the programming they're doing in high school? So that was an interesting thread to think through.
Nice.
And Janelle, in our group with the Mat-Su and Anchorage, the big thing was wishing there was a place where we could list all the different programs that are available, the cultural programs that are available in Anchorage and the Mat-Su, so that people would know where to go to find these programs.
Nice.
So that was brought up.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. And hey, just maybe good for the whole group. I don't know if you've noticed on the data for high school now, the state website puts out percent of kids that go off to college. I believe that is because the state has national clearinghouse data for all schools, and I think you can ask for it. Anyway, and if you've never worked with that data, it actually does track kids, and like 98% of the colleges in the United States contribute to that data. So you do get a pretty good sense of where your kid, whether your kids have gone on and persisted or not. So Southeast.
Alicia, I think that's you.
There we go. Oh, phew. Sorry, my mouse is not being cooperative. We talked about the Southeast has a regional convening for AlaskaCAN, and that we have a framework, which the link is in one of the post-its that might be worth looking into for your other regions to look at and possibly adopt. And then again, a place to look at all of these resources. We have a lot of things going on. And the thought is maybe we need to take the time to look at everything that's going on and actually work on stuff instead of creating more stuff. Did I miss anything, everyone? Hearing none. Thank you.
I think that was a great summary. Thank you. And Southwest.
I can go ahead and speak for Southwest. So we have a lot going on in our region. We have a Bristol-based CTE group. We have a BB&C culture camp that happens each year where we get students into our region from other parts of the region. We have a Bristol Bay campus that's pretty active. We have a Bristol Bay ANSEP Middle School Academy that happens each year. So there's a lot of coordinating going on within our region. We have a Bristol Bay or a BBEDC career fair. We have Ed Foundation funds culture activities. Of course, Native Youth Olympics. We have a SAVEC, Southwest Alaska Vocational Ed Center. So there's a lot going on in our region, and what we thought about to build in cultural identity into some of the work that we do. We thought about incorporating more elders in our activities. That's very important, and it's a value that we hold close in our region. Also building cultural values into our lessons. We talked about indigenizing our career fairs and really celebrating our young people in different ways, not just pushing things at them, but celebrating where they're at that moment, and then inviting them to talk about future. And then incorporating native languages into the K through 12 systems. And then just more connections. Also with, what else we have out there, BB&C's Place Names Project and our Day in the Bay videos are very culturally rich. So maybe more connecting the dots as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. And I did think as I paged through real quick, there really is a ton of cool stuff going on. So I think for most of the regions, there's a little bit of work now, and I'm just like, how do we make it all happen? Or how do we make sure it's happening in a systematic way? So very, very cool. And big shout out, there's a couple of shout outs about indigenizing the career fair. So great idea. I heard a lot of gasp, I think, with the professors coming into the high school. So that's another great idea, apparently. And so thanks to all the regions for sharing some things and giving us a chance to learn from each other. And I will pass it back to, I think, Barbara, are you the one closing up?
I am. Thank you so much, Janelle. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, and I will make this quick, but I want to thank all the members of the Professional Development Committee for their help in putting this convening together. And I want to give a big thank you to both Janelle and also Dominica. Janelle, you just helped really tie it all together. And Dominica, you are the glue that holds the AlaskaCAN board members all together. So I appreciate that. I also want to mention to everybody that evaluation is going to be emailed to you after the convening. And if you complete this by the close of business tomorrow, you will be put in for a drawing for 2 $25 Amazon gift cards. Plus, we will use your ideas and things that you give us in your evaluation to help improve convenings in the future. And that's the big reason. But, you know, I want you guys to do it. So get put in for those $25 gift cards. I want to thank everybody. It was great. I learned a lot, and I hope you guys learned a lot too. Thank you all. This has been great. Anybody have any other comments to close with? All right.
Can you send us a copy of the Jam board? I can't figure out a way to PDF it because there's so many great ideas in that. That'd be great.
Yeah, we'll grab those and we can send those out to everybody. We might try to clean them up a little bit, but we'll get them out to everybody either this week or next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Thank you.